You are listening to the Hostage to the Devil podcast. Some listeners may find this content disturbing.
Thank you for giving me your time, your precious time. And can you introduce yourself to the audience who don't know you and your line of work?
I'm in this very strange line of work, if you will. Have been for almost 5 decades. It's a long time.
Wow.
I never thought I'd make it, but here I am. I have a birthday coming up on the 26th, and I'm going to be 72 years old. And that, too, is kind of an achievement, I think, especially in my line of work. Most people who are involved in the ministry of exorcism, we tend not to make it. I mean, at least, for so long in terms of years and life and so on. But I'm still around. I have members in my organization in 24 countries around the world, and they consist of bishops and priests and investigators. We have laity that work on the other end of collecting the evidence and making an assessment on our behalf. And since I have bishops in various countries, when they have people who respond asking for our services, it's filtered through us. And what we do, in essence, is we reach out to the jurisdictional bishop, who will at that time make a decision as to whether or not they will accept the assignment. And if they do, then they would assign their team of investigators who do the actual first contact interview and assessment. And the assessment is actually something that we require in order for us to go any further. We have to make sure we know exactly what type of case we are getting into, if you will. When we make the assessment, we make sure that it's, number one, if it's some form of psychosis, we have psychiatrists in our organization that will actually read the psychological evaluation. So part of the assessment is that we have our investigators collect a psych evaluation as well as a health record in terms of whether or not they are physically able to at least respond in a manner where we could make an assessment. I've called myself and I present myself as a semi-retired clergyman, but that's not really the case. You never really retire from this type of ministry, mainly because it involves a calling, and it's a divine calling. And so when this takes place, we have a different perspective in terms of what we're doing and how we're doing it. I'm adjusting the sound of my cell phone. Sorry about that. I'm going to say that I started the ministry as following a calling, a divine calling, and I received the calling, my calling, when I was 11 years old. 11 years old. And I could go into it and try to articulate as to what took place. It's quite interesting. My journey started with a supernatural event. That's the best way to put it. And my supernatural event occurred when I was 11 years old. And I was in the bathroom and I was taking a shower. Keep in mind, I'm only 11. And this bright light, almost blinding light, blast right through the bathroom window. So much so the light was so bright that it illuminated the entire room. And I recall I had to close my eyes because of the brightness. And as I did, that's when I saw myself many years in the future. I saw myself actually working in some capacity in a church, and I had a Roman collar on, and I didn't see myself as an exorcist, but I did see myself as a clergyman. And as time went on, I had received education. I received what's referred to as holy orders. Holy orders is actually It's a ritual where an individual receives ordination into the priesthood. And that was back in the mid-1970s. Yeah, that's a long time ago. I had theological training, was ordained into the priesthood. And at that point, I consulted with my spiritual director and asked him and made a request that I was interested in the ministry of exorcism. Now, understand at that time, exorcism and the ministry of exorcism has been going on since day one. We're talking about a couple of thousand years now. But my jurisdictional bishop asked me if this was a calling, if this was my calling, and I did say, yes, I believe it was my calling. I went through the whole story and so on. He assigned me to a mentor. Now, in this time, I had 3 mentors, but the one mentor was an experienced exorcist, and I became his assistant for 4 years. It was kind of like an on-the-job training type of scenario. Where anytime he had a case, I would be there. I would read the response. We used a Roman ritual, and which is like a series of prayers to drive out the demon. And now, my part as the assistant is I would read the responses, and the exorcist, who was a bishop, would actually perform the ritual. And so for 4 years, I was his assistant. And this went on. We've had many cases, between 3 to 6 cases a day, which sounds like unbelievable. But, sometimes it just required a house blessing in terms of doing an evaluation and then trying to understand what the problem is. Now, this is before I created this systematic analytical approach in regards to how to make an assessment to see whether an individual is truly has a demonic issue, or if it's something else, such as a psychological issue. If that be the case, of course, we have other services that we refer the victim to. But in getting back to the story, in 1979, I was 79, 1980, somewhere like there. I was elevated to bishop-elect. And in 1982, I was consecrated as a Catholic bishop in the traditional Roman Catholic Church, the old Roman Catholic Church. And as a result, I started receiving many requests within our jurisdiction in regards to people who are requesting our assistance in regards to exorcisms and evaluations and things of this nature. Back in 1982, I created what's referred to as, and what I've called, the process. And the process is an actual program that's a written program where people, priests, and investigators will follow in regards to what they should say and how they should conduct themselves for the first contact interview. The process consists of 3 sections, which is the first would be the health section. The psychological section would be the second, and the third would be the manifestation, what takes place within the home and within the individual. And as our investigators are actually interviewing the victim, they're also being taped. And we have videos of the individual who is responding to the questions. We have 60 questions that make up the assessment profile. And once we have that information, our team would make a walkthrough investigation. They would investigate the house, every person that's in the house, as well as do an investigation on the victim, find out whether or not this individual had other cases that he's tried to seek help on. And if that be the case, there should be some type of paper trail that would indicate that this individual had similar problems in the past. And of course, this would all be collected as evidence, and all this would be put together in in what we refer to as the actual assessment. Now, keep in mind, we also request the psychological evaluation and the health records of the individuals before we do anything. So what we do is, in my case, I would just simply look at the evidence. I would consult with our psychiatrist, and they would see whether or not there is something that we should be concerned with, or if it's just a normal scenario. And then I would make a judgment call in regards to whether or not we should go on and go further into the case, which would call for an actual ritual. And we would assign a priest to do the ritual. And along with their team, the investigation team would accompany the priest. And this is pretty much how the process would be. Since our organization is worldwide, we have requests from people from different countries. And if we have a bishop in that country under their jurisdiction, we would ask if they would get involved in the case. And if that be the case, then they would assign their investigators and they would do the assessment. The time on all of this would take anywhere from 3 to 6 months. And it sounds like a long time. And when a person has and shows symptoms of demonic possession, they're going through tremendous pain, and they're going through the anguish. They're going through so much, and it's horrible that they have to wait for so long. But we have to do our diligence. We have to make sure that we covered all the bases. We have to make sure that this is truly a demonic issue. And if it's not, we could throw the victim further into their psychosis, and if that be the case, it could be very dangerous for them. We're feeding them, into the delusions, and a lot of people have that have been in this state have actually been driven to a point of suicide. So this is a very serious, extremely serious type of scenario. This is a serious ministry. There are a lot of clergy that won't even acknowledge the fact that demonic possession is a real thing. Ever since mental health, issues have come up, we have a psychiatry, we have psychology, we have people that can actually analyze behavior and put a label on it and call it a psychosis. This is why we have 2 psychiatrists in our organization, and so before we do anything, we have to make sure that it's not a psychological issue, because if it is, well, then obviously we have to make other referrals. And this is what we do. Well, I receive between 2 to 6 cases, 2 to 3, 4, 5 cases a day. And these are people that are requesting assistance. And I'll keep in mind, I'm semi-retired, so to speak. But since I've been out there for so long, I have a website out there, www.orderofexorcists.com. And people contact us online. Of course, we have many social platforms as well, Facebook and so on. We also have a podcast, weekly podcast, where we invite callers to call in with their concerns, especially if they feel they have demonic issues, or if they feel that they are actually experiencing symptoms of demonic possession. Now, I have to say, demonic possession is very rare, but when it happens, and if it's a genuine case, you will know beyond a shadow of a doubt. It goes beyond everything that you may have seen on TV or movies and so on. People will actually levitate. Supernatural things will take place. Things will start moving totally by themselves, and there should be no reason as to why these things would happen unless it's supernatural. We believe that our ministry is in the middle of the battle between good versus evil. We acknowledge the fact that there is evil in the world. And, you could be an atheist and you still have to understand and admit there's a lot of evil going on in this world that we live in. We have people that are so dedicated and they're the best of the best. They're willing to put themselves in front of danger. They're willing to put themselves in front of the darkness and all the fears that go with it. It could be very devastating, especially if you've never experienced the supernatural and you're part of our team as an investigator, and you see these things happen before your very eyes. It makes you a believer like really fast when you see things like that.
Just from a realism point of view for the audience, you say you get 5 to 6 a day. Out of all those cases, I know it's hard to say per year because it changes, but how many of those cases from a percentage point of view are actual demonic possession, and how many are sort of demonic oppression, obsession?
Well, demonic oppression is more common than demonic possession, but we don't know what kind of case it is until we do an assessment. So the way it works is that we have people that will email me directly, and when I receive the emails, I look at the case. I look at what they're describing in regards to whatever situation it is, and then at that point, I notify all of my members worldwide as regards to the exact verbiage that has been given to me. I put it on a report and I send it out to all my members. It's a group email. And any members that are willing to travel to the location, or maybe the case has originated in their city or state, country, whatever, they would acknowledge the fact that they are willing to accept the case. That being the case, then I give them, as I notify all the members in our organization about a case. Every time a case comes in, I send it out to our group. It has information as to their contact information, phone number, email address, and more importantly, the description as to what's taking place. And then at that point, if one of our clergy from one of our affiliates around the world, let's say they want to take the case, they would contact me, let me know, they keep me abreast as to what's going on. If it's one of our affiliate jurisdictional bishops, they would contact me and they would tell me that their team is on it. They've accepted the case, and as I said, the process is it takes a long time to actually come down with a true assessment. But we try not to make any mistakes because, as I said, it truly is a life and death situation. I don't want to feed someone's psychosis and support what they truly believe is something that's, and the reality is it's nothing but a psychosis. Now, understand, too, that there's a very fine line between a psychosis and a demonic influence, because who's to say the demonic influence can actually drive a person into what's referred to as a psychosis. So, we have to be very careful in our approach when we make our assessments.
So is it fair to say that true possession is very rare?
True possession is very rare, but I will say this. When it comes up, it will hit all the red flags, okay? Some people say, well, if you've ever seen a person who has a seizure, epileptic seizure, for example, it looks like the person's possessed because, you'll see the body will contort. You'll see unnatural movements from the body and joints, and it would be it's sometimes very frightening, to say the least. But it doesn't mean it's a possession, It could be just simply a medical condition. And, and that could happen. But when you see the victim do something other than just contort their body, when you see them do something that's unexplainable, like crawling up a wall or literally levitating. Oh, in my career, my 48 years, I've seen at least a couple of dozen people that actually did this. I mean, it's like an unbelievable phenomenon. And then, to even hear these cases, you have to be at a certain level where you are embedded in your faith, because all your logic, information that you were taught, will tell you just the contrary, that it cannot be true. These things cannot happen. And most of the time, and I say most of the time, I say about 90% of the time, you will never hear about these cases because they're done behind closed doors. Everything is confidential. The victim, if the victim is truly going through a demonic possession, then that poor soul is going through so much torture that their body is reflecting what is actually taking place. You will see that their skin color will change, their eye color might change, their hair color will change. You will see other things that are totally unexplainable. The texture of the skin, for example, would be very cold. Now, I've often said that the best way to describe a person who is going under this type of scenario, poor thing, first of all, but when they go through this type of scenario, you will look at the body and you could see the body decomposing before your very eyes. Their organs are no longer functioning to 100%. There are different things that take place where the body itself will be transformed into something else. And this goes beyond the average comprehension. I mean, come on, this is incredible stuff here, But, all the movies that you've seen about exorcisms and demons and all that, that's not even covering at least 40% of what's actually taking place. I mean, there is so much going on behind closed doors. And I'll tell you right now, and I'm like, as I said, I'm approaching 72 years old. And so at this point, I don't really care too much what people think when I tell them, when they ask me to tell them about the process and to tell them the stories that go on, the true life stories. I don't really care if they believe it or not. All I can do is just tell the truth. And the people who are in our various teams in 24 countries will tell you the same. When you see something that's supernatural, you don't have to convince anyone, because it takes a lot of convincing to actually have someone actually believe you 100%. But for them to be a true believer, they have to be in the room, the ritual room. They have to be part of the investigation team. And when they start seeing things move by themselves, the furniture moving from one side of the room to the other, it can be pretty shocking. Talk about being a true converter. I mean, you become a true believer almost immediately when you see something like that happen. Okay, there's no doubt. Now, in regards to public opinion, well, they will tell you, especially if they've never truly acknowledged or experienced anything supernatural, they tell you all of this is fantasy. But those of us who have been through it, and those of us who have actually come close to death, which I have a few times, I'll share a story with you.
My next question was, without sensationalizing the topic, can you talk us through one of your, let's say, most challenging cases?
Yes, I'm going to. And that's going to the most horrifying true event that occurred was when it affects you personally. And it has affected me personally. I've been close to death. In 2013, I was doing an exorcism ritual, and I had my team and several members were around me. And as I was doing the actual ritual, I felt what the best way I could describe it was a 2x4 struck me 3 times my rib cage on my left side. I literally lost my breath. We were everyone saw the reaction. There was nobody there, of course. It was an invisible entity that struck me 3 times on my left side. To this day, I still have a residual of the experience, but that's another story. I keeled over, but I was able to recompose myself and continue the ritual with the help of a couple of my assistants. Um, and then at the end, we were successful. It took us a long time, a few days, but we were successful. But when that incident occurred, I had to go to the hospital immediately. I saw my family physician and then, of course, to the hospital. And what they found was they found a 2 liter sack of blood that was wrapped around my heart. And they have, and to this day, they have no idea as to how I succumbed to that condition. They removed 2 liters of blood from the sack that was wrapped around my heart, which caused me, of course, the shortness of breath and so on. I was in the hospital for 30 days. The hospital was San Antonio, and San Antonio Community Hospital in Upland, California. I give this as a point of reference because what I'm saying is absolutely true, every bit of it. To this day, I still have residual pain. And this past year, I had 3 CAT scans, and of course, the blood analysis, the whole 9 yards, and they can't find anything. And yet, I've been suffering physically for some time now. It's all because of the residual that had occurred back in 2013. I mean, the pain on my side is severe at times. But anyway, my story, I could tell it with lots of passion because I went through it. But the stories I could tell you of other people that have gone close to losing their life, or people who have actually died in the process, I could tell you those stories as well. But okay, and I see a little flag on my computer. I love this technology. Okay, I mean, I can't wait for you to invite me a second time once we have mastered this technology. And of course, I made a joke. I said, well, if you have a teleporter, that could just teleport me to your location, that'd be the best way to do it. And that will happen one day. I may not be around, but it'll happen one day. Okay, you have another question.
I was going to say it's very cold here in Ireland, so I would say I would stay where you are. Can you address to the audience your denomination? You mentioned about traditional Catholic. For an audience that doesn't know the difference between pre-Vatican II, post-Vatican II, can you talk to the audience about what your denomination is?
Well, we are Catholic, a Catholic faith. We are pre-Vatican II. All our sacraments are acknowledged by the Vatican. We have what's referred to as apostolic succession, valid lines of apostolic succession, which is a line that started when Jesus Christ placed his hands on his disciples in the very beginning. Since that time, we've had a Christian tradition, where hands would be laid on to our disciples, to our followers, and they in turn would do it. But this went on for 2,000 years. Okay, we have a line of apostolic succession, which is kind of a spiritual tattoo that's placed upon us, and so that's been going on. Of course, the Catholic Church has gone through lots of schisms and lots of shoots and so on. But we have apostolic lines, and so they acknowledge our sacraments. We are part of the Catholic faith, and our sacraments are all, they're all valid, and that's why we're able to actually perform these rituals that are effective. There's a lot of people that we have helped over the years, and I have to believe it's because of the Holy Spirit. I have to believe that because of the apostolic succession and our faith base that we're able to be successful. And that's probably basically it. That's basically what we do. There's lots of other branches of the Catholic Church that people may know or may not even acknowledge. Of course, we have the Eastern Orthodox Church, Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox. They all have the apostolic succession, which makes that their rituals are valid and recognized through other bodies of the Catholic Church. We have Eastern Orthodox, of course. So we have a lot of different denominations within the Catholic Church. A lot of traditional priests will tell you the same. However, there's a lot of staunch Roman Catholic for the Mother Church will tell you just the opposite. Pope John Paul II had signed a document in the year 2000, which acknowledged that even though we are not in full communion with the Vatican, we are still part of the Church. And since our sacraments are valid through apostolic succession, we've been accepted in the main fold. Even though that most of our bishops and priests are autonomous, and the only thing that connects us together beyond beside the apostolic succession is that we share this ministry of exorcism. We charge no one. This is a free ministry. We never ask for money. Of course, people like to donate. That's a different story. But we never ask for money. It's not a business. It's a ministry. And so as a result, we thank God for that ability to be part of something that is unique, if you will.
Would you say the rite of exorcism became weaker post Vatican II? When you're doing the rite, are you using pre-Vatican II?
The old tradition, yeah, the old tradition. It's Vatican II. They eliminated the St. Michael's prayer for the Mass. It used to be part of the Mass. It's no longer. And when we celebrate Mass, we say it in Latin. So there's some subtle differences such as that. But as a traditional Catholic priest, we stay close to our beliefs, and we are part of the Catholic Church. And the Protestant, by the way, they have a ministry of exorcisms too. It's called their deliverance ministries, and the same outcome. I would say that as a traditional old Roman Catholic denomination, we make our final judgment in regards to exorcisms and whether or not we are going to perform an exorcism. That is left to the jurisdictional bishop of that city, town, country. And so they're totally autonomous in that respect. In other words, they don't have to ask for my permission if they decide to take on a case and follow it through. That's up to the decision of the jurisdictional bishop. So that's basically how it works. The Roman Catholic Church, of course, they have another process that they go through. But our process has been effective. Our analytical approach has been very, very effective, and I glory to God. I mean, we're doing something that needs to be done, especially in this very real battle of good versus evil.
Father Martin, back in the 1990s, declared, from his point of view, there was a huge rise in possession cases and obsession cases, etc. Can you give us a current state of the ground right now from the spiritual battlefront?
Sure. I will say it from this point of view. Okay, the number of exorcisms have been that's exorcism rituals have been increasing, and the body count, if you will, of a person who actually is going through this condition seems to have risen. But I have to tell you, there's a couple of factors involved here. When Jesus Christ was walking the earth, and preaching and his public ministry for 33 years, his geographical location was only 200 miles. And that was the distance. Only 200 miles. Now, I know that there are other theories and hypotheses that say that he was gone for a certain period from the age of 12 to 30. There's no recording as to what happened in those years. And some people say, well, he no doubt went to Egypt. He went to other parts of the world, learning other things and spreading, his presence and his holiness. And that's just, again, someone's hypothesis. I think that it's a pretty known fact that he only traveled, at least in our point of view, 200 miles. Okay, and performing miracles and showing people that God loves them and that He was there as God working the earth. He was part of the Holy Trinity. I mean, he walked the earth, performing miracles and so on. The cases that were coming in then were probably the same as they are now. The only difference is that we have technology. Our technology, we're able to see what's happening around the world. We're able to keep track of what's happening. At the time of Christ, there was they didn't have that technology. In fact, this technology is pretty new. I mean, maybe close to maybe 80 years now that we're doing what we can do, and it's amazing. I mean, it's like, you kind of wonder if it's even real, but it is. So we can actually take account based on what we see, what we observe. But in regards to people who are falling into temptation, people who are falling as victims of the demonic, that has been going on from day one. And nobody really can say that the cases have increased, even though I will say that because of the internet, a lot of people have been exposed to a lot of demonic influences by way of just viewing the internet. And because of that, there are, which would cause demonic oppression, which is a seed that the demonic would plant in one's mind. And they would not even even know that it's part of an invasion per se. They would think it's just part of their normal behavior. They just start demonstrating negative behavior, not even knowing that it was actually an intentional implant into the mind of an individual. Demonic oppression it's a way that actually works. That's the way that is, which is really sad. But to answer your question, I see more cases today than I did yesterday, and it's because of not only the demonic influence, but it's also because of what we are observing. We see new things, and we learn from those things. And unfortunately, a lot of it's negative. A lot of it is demonic.
Would you factor in technology as one of the reasons for the increased exposure to the demonic?
I would say that because you're gaining new information, and the new information, who knows where it's coming from, but that new information is being fed to you. As we listen and view things and examine things in our lives, we're taking in all this information. It's said that every bit of information we take in is actually leaving a mark on the cortex of your brain. And so, when they do an autopsy, and if you've ever seen a brain, you'll see all these lesions and wrinkles and so on. Each of those, at least some theorists say, that it represents a memory. So, I mean, think about all the negative things that we have been exposed to. Think of all the other things that we've been tempted to do because of the information that's being fed to us. The technology is a blessing, but it can also be a curse, depending as to how it's used. And unfortunately, the normal phenomenon is that we want to learn as much as we can about ourselves, about the world, about other things, and by doing that, it makes us more open to other things that we would never even consider. So yes, I think I think this technology could be very dangerous.
Obviously, television and film shows don't really help with the authenticity of what you do. But can you eradicate a few misconceptions now for the audience?
Well, yeah, the power of God is always it's always will surface and always be victorious. Um, God is much more powerful than Satan himself. Um, Way back in the beginning of time, God had a favorite angel that he loved so dearly, and he loved this angel because this angel was not only bright but just did a whole lot of wonderful things that God had viewed. And this angel knew of how God had favored him, and he became very absorbed in himself and wanted to be just like God, and started to declare himself as just as great as God. God didn't particularly like this line of belief. This angel was named Lucifer, and God thrust Lucifer, kicked him right out of heaven. And on his way out, Lucifer took 1/3 of the angels, and those angels are known now as the fallen angels. They're also identified as demons. They've fallen down to earth with Lucifer, who now is known as Satan, the adversary. He's at times he will disguise himself as an angel of light, because he was an angel of light in heaven when he was in the good graces of God. So right now we're dealing with the demons, these fallen angels, and their mission is to hurt God and try to insult God with harming God's creation. We are God's creation. We are made in the image of God, and God loves us, each and every one of us. And the demons, Satan knows this, and he wants to hurt God by destroying us. And the demons, they can't actually hurt us, but they can invade our minds, and they could make us hurt ourselves. They can drive us to do other things that are negative in nature. And this is where substance abuse may fall in, maybe just an overindulgence of something that's terrible, very bad for the body, may cause us to do evil things, may even cause us to lose faith in everything and commit suicide, which is the ultimate sin. As a result, the whole purpose for the fallen angels, who are demons, is to try to hurt God by hurting us. And we have been called to this ministry. That is, we, as the clergy, warriors of God, if you will, we have been called to this ministry to fight the evil and darkness of the world. And so when we fight demons, we are not only fighting them, but we're literally in a battle. And if the demon decides to go into one of God's creations, and if we happen to be in part of the scenario, we have to do the very best we can to drive that demon out. And we do that by a series of prayers. We do that by concentrating and allowing ourselves to be used by God. And that's the only way to drive out a demon. Sometimes it takes a couple of days, weeks, months. It's very involving, to say the least. Yeah.
You mentioned before about other people's stories. Can you talk us through a few cases that really sort of hit home and were quite scary in its essence. Could you talk us through cases from, if it's friends who've seen it or witnessed the manifestations? Talk us through a few stories.
It's funny, that's the people want to know, general speaking, people always want to know, tell us your most scariest story. Well, I'll tell you that all of these stories are terrible. All of these stories are horrifying. I mean, I just said furniture moving by itself. I mean, that's pretty scary in itself. When you start seeing the environment change, even the air changes. It becomes heavy. You can feel the air pressing against your body. That's kind of scary. Or when you feel the ground that you're standing on starts vibrating, and if you touch the walls, you run the risk of being part of that wall. You talk about horrifying. Oh, all of these stories are scary. I could tell you lots of stories about people who've actually died in the process, not because of what we did, but because it was time for them to make their exit. And unfortunately, they were driven to do themselves in, unfortunately. There's a lot of people in mental institutions that are there because they've gone through a ritual of exorcism. Maybe they've just simply surrendered, and as a result, they've allowed themselves to get even further and further into the darkness. All this is scary. All this is horrifying. I could tell you a story about what occurred many years ago, and I could tell you our most recent story. But let me tell you a story that, and in regards to being horrified, well, yeah, it's a little startling. I mean, I've been in hotels. Most of my ministry has been in the Skid Row areas, and we would service all of these rundown hotels. And majority of the people that live in these hotels, they're like at the end of their rope. They're just about waiting for death because they've lost all hope. A lot of them are drug addicts. A lot of them are alcoholics. A lot of them have just simply mental disorders. A lot of them are vicious thieves, even murderers, drug dealers. The bottom area of society can be probably found in this kind of environment. And we've had many hotel managers and owners of chains of hotels that have called us and asked us to do an evaluation because something unbelievable or something strange is happening in their facilities. There's at least, probably more now, but way back then, I think the count was about 200 of these structures, these hotels that were in downtown areas in Los Angeles, California. And I will go into some stories with you, but this would be, I don't want to mention the hotel by name, but if you listen to the story and listen carefully, you could probably, and if you know Los Angeles and some of the hotels, you probably know which hotel I'm referring to, because there's many of them. The one particular hotel that comes to mind was on, okay, the one story that comes to mind is on Main Street in downtown Los Angeles. That's the only area I'm going to give you. Change the location. This hotel houses about 80 or rather 800 tenants. And each person, as I said, about maybe 9 out of 10 of them have some of the problems I've just discussed in regards to substance abuse and so on. And a lot of these individuals, they check in, but they never check out, at least not alive. And we've been called many of times to just simply make an assessment, see what's actually going on. And if anything else, just to satisfy the curiosity of the owner or the manager or the management of the hotels as to why things are happening. And So as I'm talking, and this is really weird, as I'm talking, I have one of those pains right now on my side. It's really, it's funny. Every time I talk about the subject matter, I always seem to experience something physically. Okay, I'm getting away from the story. Um, some of the rooms in these hotels are vacant because of recent homicides, or because of crime scenes and so on. It's because of the violence that goes on in these places. The violence is triggered by the darkness. And I believe a lot of these individuals are struggling with life, and they're in darkness because they happen to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. And as a result, a lot of them will perish and never leave the hotel. There was one case that I could think of that where the management was complaining about a room that was on the 8th floor of this hotel. And when this hotel has like number of rooms on one floor, and what would happen between the hours of 1 and 3, the tenants would hear banging on the doors, and not just on one room, but on every room on that one floor. And they would hear the banging, banging, and banging. And of course, the tenants have been complaining for many years in regards to the sound that was coming out. And it's interesting enough that everyone and this entire hotel would hear the banging and hollering and all kinds of really strange sounds coming from some of these rooms. So we decided to do an investigation. I sent a team out there to do an assessment and to approach this hotel as a possible case of demonic infestation. Demonic infestation is when the area is opened to dark forces, demons, if you will. And this normally is triggered by people that experiment or play with Ouija boards, or they open up various vortexes in a particular space, and they allow the darkness to come in. And then when that happens, all kinds of things happen. It's interesting. The manager has an assistant, and the manager's assistant has only 6 fingers. Reason being is every time he would go up to the floor over the years, something would happen, and he'd lose a finger, literally lose a finger. And of course, people could explain and say, well, he's closing a window, or something happened, where the finger was just severed. And the reality is that it was too much of a coincidence that he would have to go to the same floor where all the sound were coming from, and then he would come back and that finger would be missing. And kind of strange, very strange, and kind of like, really, can something like that really happen? Yeah, we live in a world full of mysteries, and the darkness will do anything and everything to drive us up the wall with crazy, insane things. Anyway, yeah, this individual would lose fingers, and he lost a number of fingers as a result. We interviewed the guy, and we would ask him what happened to his hand, and he would tell us he just doesn't remember, has a memory problem. I'm sure he knows. I think, what happens when a person goes through a traumatic experience, it's thrown further into the subconscious, and then it's stuck in this critical facility where they just don't acknowledge it, as part of their reality. And this is one way that we are able to continue our lives in a normal, somewhat operational status, if you will. But anyway, that one hotel, you could smell the stench. And the stench normally comes out when there's some type of dark, evil entity occupying a space. As I mentioned before, a person who is under a demonic possession, their body will actually start smelling. The stench will come out because the bodies are decomposing. The one case that I could think of was about this. She was a young girl who they actually have footage, and she was acting very bizarre. And she disappeared. And for months, people were drinking the water. Okay, in the hotel, the tenants were drinking the water, the tap water, and it had this funny taste to it. And it just so happens that the girl was found, and the girl was decomposing and was in a water tank that was located above on the roof of this hotel. And a very famous, very evil serial killer was staying at that hotel, and he was the one who actually tortured and threw this young lady into this water tank, and her body was floating there for months and decomposing. And the water that was being filtered was coming from that tank. So they actually tasted an off taste to the water. And little did the tenants know that they were actually probably drinking a lot of that body essence. Which, it's just really terrible. Is that scary? Well, I don't know. It's I wouldn't want to be put in that situation where I was living in a hotel, and on one floor there was lots of noise happening, and the management, the one person in management, was losing fingers every time he would visit a certain room on that floor. That could be a little scary.
Several exorcists have told me a few stories of manifestations that they've seen, and the biggest one, the most common one to them, was this hidden knowledge of somebody in the room or the exorcist themselves. Have you ever experienced a case where the person who is undergoing the rites has hidden knowledge about somebody in that room or yourself?
Yes, we in our assessment we have a list of various things that we look for, knowing everything that's going on, every person that walks in the room. The person who's possessed can actually look at an individual and tell you all about the individual, tell you personal things about the individual, which can be very frightening, I suppose, especially when you walk into an environment that you're totally unfamiliar with. Other things that might be of interest is they don't blink. They don't blink their eyes. It's a bodily reaction. We have to blink our eyes every few seconds in order to keep our eyes lubricated. They don't blink. They just don't blink. They'll keep their eyes wide open. The color of their eyes can change into a solid color. And when you see it happening, because there are times when you can actually see certain things take place right before your very eyes, but you see the darkness will do that to trip you and to try to get your mind off whatever you're trying to accomplish. It will, as you've heard, the devil is a liar. The devil is a master of delusions and will try to get your mind off whatever you're doing, especially if you're trying to perform an exorcism. Individuals who are actually have a real demonic entity will have the strength of 5-10 men. Super strength, can control literally a person across the room. Not a problem. Person who is actually possessed, what we try to do is tie them down to something, because we would be in danger. Okay, the demonic can, if you're within arm reach, you can get scratched, bit. You can have things thrown at you, like pieces of body parts. I had a girl who literally bit her lip off and spit it at one of us, and that was kind of unpleasant, to say the least. There's a lot of incredible things, including a complete transformation of the body. This is another interesting fact that few people know about. A person can actually change their complete form. Some into look familiar or like maybe resemble some type of reptile, from human to reptile. Huh. How about changing genders? That is, actually turning from male to female, or changing height. Maybe they're 5'10", and before you know it, they're 6 feet or shorter. I mean, the body can actually change, can be transformed. The darkness has the ability to make you see things that aren't there. Okay, maybe the transformation of the body could be, maybe it's one of those dark delusions, where you think you're seeing the person changing, but whatever happens, you're actually witnessing it. It can be very stressful, to say the least. I've had investigators go on their first case and literally run out the room because what they're witnessing is so horrifying. A lot of the details of how horrible things could be will probably not be spoken. That's for a number of reasons. We have a lot of people that were clergy that have been that have lost their sanity as a result of seeing things, and of course that's the victory for the darkness, unfortunately. A lot of the stuff I'm talking about will not be acknowledged by various denominational beliefs, because they believe that all this stuff is may have happened, but hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago. Because we could explain everything through mental health and psychiatry and so on, but the reality is that these things do happen, and they can't be explained, not at all.
It's a bit like myself setting up 6 cameras in a room, filming the rite of exorcism. Maybe a manifestation occurs, we put it in the film, but the audience is still not going to believe. I mean, it's about being in that room, about being in that space, in that energy, and experience it for yourself. I mean, as a creator, as a filmmaker, it's difficult for me to try and prove the existence of the devil, for example, in that room, because the audience might think I've rigged the room up, I've got the furniture on wires, etc., etc. So what I'm trying to do is, like we're doing now, is to interview authentic people in this ministry who can not so much ground people, but just give an authentic point of view on what they've experienced over, for example, for you, 48 years. That is an incredible achievement. And my sort of we're coming towards the end here, but my question to you is, talk us through what's going through your mind in that room as the chief exorcist, with the person on the chair, wherever they are. Talk me through what's running through your mind from as you enter that room.
Okay, even before entering the room, what we do is we fast for about 3 days. We eat nothing. We drink fluids, but we eat no physical substance. We meditate, we pray a lot. In order for us to be successful in what we do, we have to rely on our faith. And sometimes faith is, in fact, all the time, faith is something you really can't explain. It has to come from within the person and their personal belief in a higher power, in our case, God. So it's very important. When I walk into a room, I look around and I sense everything around me. I sense the climate. I sense what is being worn, what sounds are coming from the walls. Is anything moving? My peripheral vision is so good. I mean, over the years, I've learned to try to look behind what's behind me without turning my head. I mean, you have to really be paying attention, because something terrible could happen. I mean, you can have something fall on you, have a dresser fall on you, a refrigerator. I mean, anything could happen. Things are moving by themselves. And you have to, number one, be aware that these things are really happening. Number two, you have to make sure that you have your senses that you can jump out of the way when they do happen. Otherwise, you'll be flattened. I mean, you have to really be understand that everything is happening and you are not going to be able to explain anything. Um, you know, we have, and more luckily, we have these things called cell phones, and we can actually take photographs and we can to actually take recordings, and that's exactly what we do. Normally, our team is about 6 people, and we have people that are operating their cameras, which are their phones. They all are equipped with a recording device. So each one will be recording what they're seeing. At the end of the investigation, they collaborate. They bring their notes together. They view things and they start having an open discussion as to what they witnessed, what they felt when they walked in the room. Every person has a different reaction. Some people are totally and completely amazed and their mind is totally blank. Other people are just taken away. That is, they have no idea where they're at. They lose their sense of actually being in that particular space. And their mind is racing. Every person reacts differently to different things. And so as a result, I can tell you how I felt. When I walk into a room, I try to be focused on everything. I look around the room. I look at things that could be sharp objects. I look around because there's an important fact about that. I look around for other things that could be very harmful physically, not only to me, but to my team. I'm very much aware as to how many people are in the room. What is their relationship with the victim? It's just kind of important too, because if you're doing an assessment for the very first time, and that assessment should happen to prove that there's some type of a person that's actually manipulating certain things in the room, maybe like pranking you, if you will, or pranking the team, or giving false information. You have to make sure that each person that's in the room and within the immediate environment, that they're there and that they're honest and that they're open and they have nothing to hide and they're there for support for the victim. And they have no other intentions. Extremely important. Each person, each investigator, they have like a role, not only to collect as much information as possible, but also to understand that a lot of these things you're not going to be able to remember. There's a lot of things that are so traumatic that you won't remember because your understanding of what's taking place you can't relate to it because you have nothing to draw from in terms of experience. This is a very first time experience. If a person who visits the beach for the first time and jumps in the ocean and gets over his head with water and starts breathing, he's going to start going into a panic mode. Even shark bites you, you're going to go into a panic mode. You've never experienced that before. Who knows how you're going to react? Every person has a different, scenario. I don't think that was a good analogy, but anyway. If you could follow that, okay. You have to look at things with a critical eye. You have to look at things and analyze as much as you possibly can. And whatever you take away, you have to try to remember as much as you can. That's why these cell phones and our technology could be a very beneficial type of scenario when you're doing an assessment because you can record everything.
Am I right in saying that? Do you ever retire, or do you always get brought back into this line of work? And it's sort of like the old the war veteran who gets roped back into one last battle. Where do you see yourself in the next few years, for example?
Okay, well, great question, by the way. I have been trying to retire because I'm getting old and I'm feeling the pain of all the things that I've experienced in life. I'm feeling the pain physically. Even my concentration sometimes just wanders because of there's so much stuff that you have to do. You have to know. About 3 years ago, I was getting. First of all, let me go back. I officially retired about 8 years ago, 10 years ago, something like that. But not really, because people kept calling, people kept writing me with their issues, and I couldn't turn my back on anyone. So I had to come up with some kind of scenario. I kept calling and keeping in touch with all of my clergy, all of my investigators to keep this ministry going. It's like, heck, I'm replaceable, I'm sure, but but only when God feels irreplaceable. So I'm here for the long term. 3 years ago, I decided to. I came up with this idea. I don't think that anyone has ever thought of this, but I came up with this interesting idea of creating a directory, a referral directory, where I could have members of my organization, priests, bishops, investigators, psychologists, psychiatrists listed in my it's my international referral directory. It's on my website. I have the picture of each person, each member. I have their phone number, what city and country they're in, what their email address is, any other information that may be interesting. If they have, we have a seminary as well, and so in our seminary we have graduates. I put their certificates next to their names, showing that that they are trained in doing what we do, as either investigators or clergy. So I decided to come up with this idea, and I worked on it for about a year. I was able to get people together, my members together, who wanted to be listed in the directory, and I have them, and they're from all over the world, and they're in my on my website and on our directory. And so if a person wants or has an issue with some type of demonic issue, whatever it might be, they can contact somebody directly. They don't have to contact me anymore. This was my ultimate plan. I thought I was clever. Come up with this directory, and if somebody has an issue, they could just go to the directory, and they could call the priest, the bishop, or the lead investigator for that city, town, country, or whatever. They'd call them directly and then leave me out of it. So this way, they could get speedy, attention and so on. And so I thought I was clever to do this. Unfortunately, that wasn't enough. People still kept writing me and still kept contacting me about their issues. So my 80-hour week was reduced to maybe, I don't know, 75 maybe hours a week. So I just had to, I had to stay on it. We created this podcast, this weekly podcast we have. It's on every week on Saturday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and it's worldwide. And we invite people to call in with their questions or their issues. We have one psychiatrist who's on our panel, who is, who's a good friend of mine now. We have 3 experienced exorcists. We have one exorcist who has been in the ministry for 65 years. And he's a world traveler. He's been in all the missionary fields. He's been in Africa. He's walked through the jungles, and he's a great guy. And I call him Reverend Dr. Glenn. Super guy. We have a Bishop Joshua who's with us, exorcist, 35 years of the ministry, great man of God. And he's also a Bishop Dr. Joshua Sparks is his name. And then we have, of course, our psychiatrist. He's been a professor in several universities. He studied psychiatry, and he's been practicing psychiatry, I should say, for over 50 years. And then, of course, I have myself, and I've been doing this for 48 years. So altogether, we have like a combination of close to 200 years of experience, of real, what's the term? Hands-on experience, if you will. That's a term I haven't used in a long time. So, I mean, we have all this experience. So we have people calling us with their demonic issues, and we answer them. The name of our program, of course, is the Unseen Realm. And people will call it, and every week we have the show is only for an hour, but we cover a lot of territory. We answer anywhere from 3 to 6 people who are victims, and we give them input. So that's an extension of my ministry. So I do that. I also have 10 Facebook forums that I've created, and I have people running those, and I interject my opinion once in a while. To answer your question, I will probably retire when God calls me, which will probably be I hope a long time. Maybe, I don't know. But that's the best I could do.
Last question, and I thank you so much for your time. I could listen to you all day if I could. Last question is, I mean, it'd be nice to leave on a theme of hope, but you mentioned about this spiritual battle, and it's been battling for thousands of years. Right now, at this exact moment, are we winning, or are we on the back foot right now?
Again, an excellent question. You must do this for a living. Excellent question. Right now, as I speak, we're all standing in the middle of the battlefield. Some of us are getting wounded. Some of us are getting severely wounded. Some of us are dying. And that's just a matter of fact. We're all have these targets on our backs because we're God's creation, and the demonic, the darkness, wants to destroy God's creation, thinking it's going to hurt God. Unfortunately, we're the people that are walking targets. Are we winning the battle? I'm going to say, of course we are. Of course we're winning the battle. As long as there's hope, as long as you have a relationship with God, as long as you understand that you're part of the light, you're not part of the darkness. And as long as you continue to hold your ground, of course, we are victorious. We are going to win this battle. Yeah.
Beautiful close. Thank you very much. God bless you for your time and your energy, and I hope you continue on for the next few years. And if you're open for a film crew to come over, just let us know. Give us the green light, and we'll be over. And I'd love to get you on camera for real, and meet some of your team, and get to know the real characters behind this this spiritual battle that's happening. Not just in America, but across the world.
Yes. Well, I thank you for inviting me on your show, and I wish you the very best of luck.
Thanks for listening to our podcast, and remember about our Facebook page where you can find out more information about our documentary. If you have some spare cash, then please buy us a coffee over at buymeacoffee.com/HTTD podcast to help us keep this podcast going. And it would only be right to finish with the main man himself.
Wherever there is a satanic ritual or any kind of occult ritual, there is a very strong danger or a very strong possibility that possession will take place. Is that true?
It can't take place without possession.
You mean the ritual and all of this cannot take place without
somebody being possessed?
So someone in the group that might be involved in something would be a possessed person?
Who organizes?
What's the telltale signs of a possessed person? Or are there any?
Multiple. It can be various things. The multiple signs, and there are telltale signs in younger people. In older people, the signs are very difficult to detect because they've learned to cover up.
Okay.
And an older person who has undergone possession probably is what we call perfectly possessed. That is, they're completely tranquil about it. The younger people, though, rebel against it at a certain moment. And hence you have the phenomenon of getting violent and thrashing around. And a baby, when it's hungry, bangs its head against the ground if you don't feed it. And we eat also. And there are signs like somebody who's out of control, speaking funny languages, losing control of their bowels, a horrible smell sometimes pursuing them, or freezing cold, or strange happenings, irrational things happening to tables and chairs and pictures and doors and corridors where they walk, or the car they're driving. The signs are multiple, and you've got to be very careful to do a proper diagnosis, because sometimes it's just people are stupid, or they're afflicted, or they've got a disease like Huntington's chorea or La Tourette syndrome, all of which we know is due to chemical imbalance of some kind or other, or a tumor in the brain. So all that thing must be carefully studied in a particular case. Remember this, there is a great attraction about Luciferianism, and the attraction is power. If you lose the grace of God, if you haven't got it, if you don't pray, if you don't belong to Christ, if you don't belong to God, if you've lost his grace, then the next best thing is Luciferian. Because it's a great sense of power, and it does give certain powers, there's no doubt about that. And Lucifer does help his adepts. He does protect them and aid them. They're not completely without resources. And the training, the formation is such that it makes you immune. You're taught to inflict pain without flinching. You're taught to see death. You start with puppy dogs and cats, and you can graduate to babies without a qualm. And destruction, mainly by fire, becomes a joy. These are the marks of the Luciferian attachment. It starts in a funny way through some mistake, like the use of an Ouija board, or transcendental meditation, or through hypnosis, or through, as we found out with the 20-somethings and 30-somethings, positive requests. Young men and women who can't make it, they ask to make a pact. And then they come and say, listen, please help me out of this. He won't let me go. And by the way, it's very hard for them to go. And sometimes they call you up and say, forget it. I'm done. He's my boss. He's going to take me. I belong in hell.